For many ISVs, it's not really a choice. It's where they're built. But if you're new and you're building a product, it would behoove you to look at your ICP, define what that is before you've built that and finalized where that product's going to live, because your buyers are going to really impact and influence which marketplace you want to be in.
Today, I'm very happy to welcome Rob McLaughlin, who's a founder and CEO of Audiences.
Great to be here, Pascal.
And I'm also welcoming Patrick Riley from Tackle.io. Patrick is a principal in the cloud go-to-market team. Welcome, Patrick.
Awesome. Great to see you both. Thank you.
And today, we have Robert, and you're building Audiences. Maybe walk us through what is Audiences and how did you get there? How did you get to build Audiences?
Absolutely, Pascal, and it's great to be here. So we recognized a very significant problem within the advertising industry, that less than 3% of media is actually informed by any form of first-party customer data. And the cause of that was very clear. It's the large proliferation of privacy and data security challenges which large enterprises face when trying to share their customer intelligence. So we created a cloud-native application which runs natively with AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure, which enables those enterprises to be able to share that first-party insight directly with the advertising ecosystem, everything from search, social, programmatic, all the way through to even TV, connected TV and outdoor.
Okay. And obviously this is this is a big market, but this is also a very specialized offering. Maybe walk us through your career journey that led you to having that insight and seeing the opportunity.
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky to work at Sky, the broadcast and telecommunications company here in Europe, back in 2016, and I was head of data there, sitting across both the buy and the sell side of media, and the organization had already made a really brave decision to re-platform their operational data onto Google Cloud Platform. Now, here in 2024, 25, we would say that's pretty normal, and a very standard step to take. But if you cast your mind back to 2016, that was a truly adventurous, pioneering step to make for an organization at that point, one of the largest in Europe, about to become about to be acquired by Comcast and become a global organization. And my team and I pioneered the concept of being able to read tables of data, in that case, BigQuery, and create routines, to some extent you could say, processes and applications which would share that data in an encrypted form directly with advertising and marketing platforms. That was truly transformational back in 16, 17. I left Sky in 2018 to found a consulting company. And what I found after 4 years, and we were very lucky, growth was incredible. A lot of large organizations were adopting cloud platforms and using data warehouses to structure their data. And when they said, what's the next step so we can get value in marketing and especially advertising, we were able to guide them. And I found after 4 years, the answers were incredibly similar. And in that similarity was the birth of a software, and that software is Audiences. So I exited that consulting company that I co-founded and was lucky enough to be able to focus completely on Audiences. And we delivered our product. So it's powerful within the Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS ecosystems across a range of data warehouses. and we're helping major advertisers in the UK and the United States to activate data across the advertising ecosystem. The word they use in this vertical is interoperability. So making the data you have within your cloud warehouse interoperable across the whole funnel of media, all the way sort of below and above the line.
I think that one thing that is interesting in your case is that you started consulting, which is common. We've had other guests that started consulting before building a SaaS based on the learnings from that consulting. But in your case, you decided to sell the company back to a team, right? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I don't have any problem to say that I can only focus on one objective at one time, and building a consulting firm and scaling that and running that was fantastic. But once I decided that I wanted to focus our energies on launching SaaS, launching this software company, Audiences, I wanted to only do that. So it was a great opportunity to be able to exit.
And so your ideal, so to Audiences today sells to large companies mostly. What's the ideal customer profile?
So our ICP would say the enterprise would spend more than £5 million, dollars, or euros per year in digital advertising. I mean, more likely 15 to 20 plus million, would have more than 200,000 customer records. So you can see we're impacting a large media budget. We're also got a significant amount of customer data. I say minimum 200,000. Most clients, especially B2C, are in millions, of course. And they have the desire to drive intelligence through their advertising, which is pretty common. But we're all about driving advertising improvement at scale through the use of first-party data. So those three tiers help us define our what is a good prospect for us, and of course then our market as well. And we've got clients across multiple verticals. Consumer finance, retail, of course, but also pharmaceuticals and B2B publishing, which are really the use cases are quite different, but the value is still startling.
And so today, I think that you're doing, you have six enterprise customers.
Yes.
Doing 800K in ARR, something like that, in USD at least.
That's correct. Split across the UK and the US. Yeah.
And so you bootstrap this company based on the savings from the acquisition, I guess, of the sale of your previous consulting company, I assume. You have 5 people in the company, right? Including yourself?
That's right. Very small team, capital efficient.
When you, just before we move forward with the next section of a podcast, did you ever hesitate when you were growing this agency, and you had to build, you had to kind of almost restart from scratch to build the product company? Did you have any hesitation?
I didn't at all. I would say, in theory, a consulting company can do anything. You can do any project that a human can sell and can deliver. I never wanted to run that sort of consulting company. I always wanted it to be focused on a certain category of problems where the certain type of answers are, relatively repeatable. I didn't realize at the time, in probably year 1 and 2 of consulting, that I was already kind of using consulting as training wheels for software in that way. Consulting, of course, you've got lots of big players who can do a very wide variety of things. However, I found it I found that running specialist consultancy is far more powerful, far more exciting. And at the time, I didn't realize that if you only choose to answer a certain set of challenges with a certain set of problems, actually, that's really good training for for defining what type of problem and what type of solution you would want to build a SaaS, build a software. And so when I realized that our consulting methodologies, our go-to-market and methodologies in the consulting space were kind of mirroring what, in my mind, would have been a perfect SaaS GTM, then I didn't have any doubt at all that I would want to switch from a services model to a product model.
Sounds good. So you mentioned when we were discussing to prepare for this podcast that you had three current challenges. So one of them was around the cloud marketplace presence, the fact that you're selling mostly only to customers that are using Google Cloud or Azure or AWS, means that you can leverage the cloud marketplaces, which have very unique dynamics, which is, and Patrick, who helps ISVs sell faster and smarter through these marketplaces, will help us on that specifically. You also, you've bootstrapped so far, so the question becomes, should you fundraise and how? And then the last but not least is you're based in the UK, which is obviously a big market for advertising, but there's an opportunity to go to the US, which is an even bigger market. So we'll tackle that challenge and questions also. But maybe let's first start with your go-to-market. Like, how did you find your customers so far? And maybe what are the challenges and opportunities of selling through marketplaces? And Patrick can actually take the lead on that second question.
That sounds great. Well, we've done to date everything directly from the founder-led sales playbook. We've used the networks and the credibility that we have as a team to go to market. So that's really the cornerstone, and we've done that direct to clients, so direct to enterprises. Parallel to that, we've used again all of our network to create an agency partnership program. So we engage very much with the holdcos and the indies. Whilst they're not our clients, they are the people whose media buying is going to be informed by the first-party data that our clients have. So their influence and knowledge is extremely powerful in guiding our clients. So as we're able to seed the ideas with them, they're able to support us through a sales cycle with our clients and into engagement and activation and value. So that's super important. But kind of linking on to that, we're very, very interested in expanding our routes to market. And that's why we've looked and stayed very close to watching what's been happening in the cloud marketplaces. With some simple arithmetic, you can see, we have our products available across the three major cloud platforms, Azure, AWS, and GCP. And with 6 clients, we struggle to have the critical mass to be able to launch on those marketplaces. So as a software startup, we only have 1 or 2 clients per cloud platform, which we can use as references in order to get onto Google, Microsoft, or Amazon marketplaces. And for us, that's a challenge, one which I'm looking forward to talking to with Patrick for sure.
Patrick, what has been your experience with some of your clients on this issue? How do marketplaces engage at all with ISVs like audiences? I know that some marketplaces are very hands-off. Some are a bit more hands-on. Like, what has been your experience with your clients at Tackle?
Yeah, it's been pretty diverse, but I think it all simplifies down to they're all relatively the same challenges. Everybody's starting trying to build and establish a foundation in the cloud marketplaces, using data to figure out where their customers are. Should we sell to AWS, to Microsoft, or to Google first? What type of a company are we? AI is getting more attention than anybody else right now, and for good reason. They're drawing more consumption, which means more money for those cloud providers. But I think regionally as well, there's a little bit more attention, especially in the UK with Microsoft. So I know Microsoft leans in heavily in the UK. AWS is starting to do a little better. Google's starting to do a little better, and EMEA as a whole. But it really comes down to what is our data telling us about our ICP, about our customer base, as to which marketplace we want to go into first. And I think Rob smartly built the product so that it can deploy in all three marketplaces, which draws consumption for those companies, which makes it a product that those sellers want to sell. The challenge for him is going to be similar to those that a lot of our customers face when they're smaller and just starting. Is, hey, I need to treat this like a channel, like a true route to market, which means I need resources to do that, and that's often hard without some help. And you're kind of facing a decision: is how much do we want to invest? The good news, I'll say before I turn it back to you, the good news is it's a great time to be looking at the marketplaces. Over the last 4 years, the SMB and mid-market grew over 460%, the buyers within the marketplace. And we think that the marketplace sales, although they were at 16 billion last year, we think they'll be over 85 billion by 2028. So that's a 5x growth. So I think it's a great time for Rob and team to be evaluating that space and how can they continue to grow.
And is it a marketplace where there's a lot of inbound, meaning people like customers at IT departments go to this marketplace and search for different keywords? Or is it more a placement and you need to drive sales through traditional sales motion or through partners directly? So building a relationship with customer success teams at Google or Azure or others.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear Rob's experience with his two customers and how they bought. But generally speaking, most of the time when companies go on to the marketplace, they usually start with the private offer process. And this is kind of the legacy cloud marketplace model. It wasn't the Amazon.com or the eBay where we know what we're looking for and we would type it in. It was, hey, I've got a customer with a cloud commitment. They want to decrement that commitment. So we're going to sell through a private offer. Basically, we did all the legwork outside of the marketplace first, and we're just using it as a transaction vehicle. Well, what we've seen this year, especially with the huge shift in buyers on the mid-market and SMB space, is the PLG-led, so the product-led companies who have listings that are publicly available. We're seeing much more transactions. So I think we're at this point in time where we're starting to see a shift where people are starting to search within those marketplaces for their desired products. But in the large enterprise, it's still relatively a private offer game. We're not seeing as much shift as quickly, but it's definitely on the way there.
Rob, what has been your experience and what does it tell you in a way with what Patrick just said?
Yeah, it's really insightful. And Patrick, as you described, the private offer that's been exclusively our experience to date. We're not actually listed in the marketplaces at all yet. So everything is like a direct enterprise sale, where we talk about, to prospects, we talk about how we've got deep experience and we build our product for their given infrastructure, for their given cloud infrastructure. But I guess it's currently the most, even though our application is bound to become implemented and run within the cloud infrastructures, we are running a very traditional enterprise software sales process, which is not yet impacted by the marketplaces, and that's why we're so interested in what the benefits would be for for valid for prospects to be able to validate our their understanding of our product and the suitability for their environment by seeing it within a marketplace, and then then taking it from there for there to be helpful billing structures, framework agreements, and things like that, which would help on the client side them see how ownership, uh, or the customer experience from a technical and a financial perspective would be advantageous if they were to buy us through a marketplace. And then, of course, the idea, as a sales driven organization, we can't help but be excited about the idea that prospects could search for applications like ours and find them and kick off a sales conversation, or even perhaps transact through a marketplace. Although I would say, and I'd love so Patrick and general insight on the marketplaces, to perhaps we'll be really excited when the moment comes when marketplaces are demand channels in the same way that search is a demand channel from a consumer perspective. But our experience to date is that enterprise sales remains a long sales cycle, deep engagement practice. As I say, remain very, very open-minded to how marketplaces develop.
From a tactical standpoint, Patrick, what would you recommend to Rob? Like, do you think that there are specific best practices you've seen clients, startups do in terms of selecting one marketplace as a testing ground, or having a specific offering for a specific market segment?
Yeah, for many ISVs, it's not really a choice. It's where they're built, right? But if you're new and you're building a product, it would behoove you to look at your ICP, define what that is before you've built that and finalized where that product's going to live, because your buyers are going to really impact and influence which marketplace you want to be in. Because if you're in the healthcare space, maybe more of your customers are on Google versus on AWS. And if you're in banking, maybe you're more in Microsoft. So I think there's a tricky, I won't call it an algorithm, but there's a little bit of a tricky strategy to figuring out, if we're going to be building a product, which cloud should we go on? Now, the best answer is all three. If you can find a way to build your product and build a product that draws consumption from each of the cloud providers, then you've opened three doors. You need team and time to develop that, but that's a great way to go if it's a possibility for you. Now, for companies that already have a product, you're kind of stuck with which cloud infrastructure is my product built on, and that's the one where you're going to start. It doesn't mean you can't iterate on that product and create a new version of that product that runs on a different cloud provider. That's just a little bit of a heavier lift, right? So I say, most of our companies that we work with today, we recommend they start on the cloud that they're built on. And if they've got a way to deploy agnostically and provision within any of those environments, even better. So from a technical standpoint, I think that's probably the cleanest answer at the moment. But it's really just take a look at where your customers are buying. And with this huge growth of customers buying in these marketplaces, they're buying in one of them, and you need to figure out which one that is. And there's tools available to help you do that. But start there before you figure out where should we build. And each one of them has programs depending on what type of product you're building that might be a better fit. So there's a lot to consider.
And when you say tools, can you name one of the tools, for example? Just
Yeah, shameless plug. So Tackle, we've got a tool called Tackle Prospect, and essentially what that tool does is it allows you to score domains, basically your customers or your prospects or your ICP, and it'll come back and give you the likelihood that they'll procure through the marketplace. So a high, medium, or low score. Tools like that, or maybe you already have some buyer intent type tooling. I know G2 is partnering with um, AWS to do some more scoring and some relatability on marketplace. So if you like a certain type of software, you might also want to buy this one. So there's some evolution starting to happen there. But that type of tool that allows you to score and understand the procurement validity of each marketplace is something that's worthwhile checking out from a starting perspective.
And maybe a question for both of you that comes up based on my experience with other marketplaces. If you think about your customer, Rob, on audiences, is it more a marketer or is it more kind of a CIO type? Because my assumption is that on AWS, on GCP, the people that have access to the platforms and the marketplace are mostly in the IT teams of these big companies, right? Or they're not really the marketers.
It's really interesting because I would say in every case the value and the business case that supports the purchase of our software that sits with marketing. So the reason the enterprise is buying our software in general is because they're looking to fulfill a marketing objective, and for that reason, budget is allocated from marketing. RPOs come from marketing. That's for sure. However, they must partner with their data and technology counterparts in order to deliver that. In the same way as in legacy SaaS, you need to there's always some data engineering and integration needed. So we need to engage with both. We always engage with marketing in order to ensure that we can solve the problem that they have, and then with tech and data to ensure that we're able to partner with them to be able to to be able to implement within their environment, and access the data tables which they're happy with, and also comply with all of the privacy and security needs that they have.
Yeah, and Rob's spot on there. He's doing the exact right thing. The marketing department in a lot of our other ISVs is also the buyer, but they're not the owners of the IT spend, and they're not the owners of the commitments with these cloud providers in many cases. And so the challenge that teams like Rob's now face are, how do we enable our sellers to ask different questions earlier in the sales cycle around procurement so that we can get in front of a totally different persona and have a procurement conversation that we're not used to having. And initially that adds some work, right? And most sellers aren't going to want to add more conversations to their list. It's easier to just do what we know how to do and close the deal direct. But there's opportunity to grow those deals. That's one of the main benefits of the marketplace now, is that these deals that are co-sold with the marketplaces tend to be 20, 30, 40% larger and over time close faster. But having the sales team change how they're asking questions, implementing methodologies to find out, hey, can we ask our marketing team that we're selling to if they know if they've got a cloud commitment, and they probably don't know. And so it adds a lot of work, and it's definitely a challenge that his team and others like that are facing today. And I'm hoping we'll get easier as exposure of marketplaces gets bigger.
Robert, in terms of how you think about selling through marketplaces and the challenge that you were expressing to me when we chatted last time, do you have other questions for Patrick or I in how to think about that, so that any things that are blocking you, I would say, from your next step there?
Yeah, thank you. And I will take the opportunity to ask. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad that as a software company, we've built our application available across multiple SKUs, so available for Azure, AWS, and GCP. And we did that was always the plan from the outset, which means in our initial stages, we've been able to sell and deploy to more or less any enterprise that wants to buy our software. Fast forward 2.5, 3 years, now we're interested in how we get we get our products onto the marketplaces, but we only have one or two clients, live client references for GCP or individually for Azure or individually for AWS. And I'm very interested, Patrick, what you think. Yeah, I guess you made a very good point about, looking forward, thinking about the ICP, and I guess, is it common to, I guess I have the challenge of, should we invest time and resources, and there's full on costs, isn't there, associated with launching on all three marketplaces, or should we select one or two? And I guess, but I'm naturally very interested in actually, what Tackle might do to help, because the idea of launching onto all three ourselves without any prior knowledge of how that ecosystem works is quite daunting, and I expect we need to allocate quite significant resource to it.
Yeah, great question. So the good news is about 49% of companies that are on the marketplaces are multi-marketplace. So there's no reason that you shouldn't go multi. What we do recommend is that you do start with one, and then go from there. So as you grow, certainly you'll have more resources to invest more time in the marketplaces. Creating a listing and just getting on the marketplace is the first step, and it's not a huge lift. It's kind of table stakes right now for most companies that are like Tackle, that we're trying to get people into the marketplace. But once you're there, there's a lot of work that has to go behind it, and it's going to be a one-way street for a year. It's really going to be, hey, we've got this listing up there. Now we've got to enable our sellers to let customers know they can procure on the marketplace. We got to start to invest in the programs, which basically just means participate in the programs that the cloud providers are offering. We want to make sure we're sharing deals through co-sell, which basically is just giving them visibility. And then over time, you'll end up compensating the marketplace sellers because you'll have met the requirements for co-sell. You'll start to see them engage and send you back opportunities. You'll start to be able to leverage them to get in front of that team that controls the budget, because you're normally talking to marketers and you're not talking to the IT team all the time. So, kind of long answer, but I think you have to make sure you've got that foundation set up first. We've got to be ready to take on this responsibility of getting invested fully in the marketplace. Just listing is where the marketplaces will find many of their customers. I don't have the exact percentage, but a great majority of companies just list and then they don't participate in anything else. And that's kind of a shame, because there's a lot of value to be had when you invest, but you really need to have a person dedicated to making sure we stand up our listing properly, or that we're working with a Tackle, that we start to co-sell these opportunities, that we're enabling our sellers on how to have these conversations, and that we know how to transact through the marketplace when the time comes.
Always happy to look at next challenges, and we know that we know when we're excited to participate in in at least one of the marketplaces as soon as possible. I guess as at our stage, we know it's almost like we know it'll be almost like sod's law that as soon as we choose which marketplace to list on, we'll have a string of sales opportunities in another marketplace. and yeah, so yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a time old challenge, no doubt.
I mean, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and it is easy now. So if you hire an integrator like a Tackle or any of the others, the nice thing is today to get you listed on all the marketplaces is you know a matter of days and weeks. It's no longer months to years. So you can get it done easily to help you. It's just once you get listed, the value you're going to get out of it depends on the time you'll be able to put into it.
So the second challenge that you mentioned to me was about fundraising. I mean, so far in your career, you haven't raised much money. You built a. I mean, you were working in a corporate, and then you launched your agency. And so, obviously, it seems to me that you're going after a big market. Do you think that there are specific kind of winner takes all dynamics in your market? I mean, obviously, you're selling also to large companies, so they want you. It's a mission critical dimension for them. So I guess they're looking at you and looking at your financial viability. Like, what have you learned so far in terms of their expectation of you, your customers' expectation of you?
They expect us to behave and to roll out product like the most established software companies, technology companies, and we take up that challenge. Yeah, we're in an emerging space, but we aspire to have our product running on in their chosen enterprise environments, and yeah, so we absolutely want to deliver to the standards and the governance, and we look to do that. You know, wherever possible. I think the most significant kind of dynamic which we've seen is the is the desire to embrace compliance with data privacy and data security, and that's where the the enterprise cloud technologies are so powerful, and where the ecosystem of cloud native apps like audiences is so relevant. Where we're fundamentally both from a value perspective and a privacy and security perspective, what we would call legacy SaaS. So everything since Salesforce in the 1990s through to now, which requires an enterprise to copy their data out of their environment and put it into a third-party vendor's environment. We now sit on 20, 30 years of disappointment over the fact that you have to do so much work to then end up working with a copy of out-of-date data. And secondly, that often you don't even get to do that because the reality of consumer privacy and enterprise data security won't actually allow you to bring the data to the tools. So we try as much as possible to embrace the smart modern data stack of GCP, Azure, AWS, and the data warehousing of the likes of Snowflake, Databricks, and others, so that speed to value is quicker and compliance with privacy and security are quicker. And we see all of that going hand in hand. I'd say those are the big, when we're talking to marketers, they want the activation benefits, but they're sick of initiatives which have failed because of privacy and security. And when we talk to their technology and data counterparts, they want to be able to comply first before they want to ensure compliance first before they bring any solution further sort of through the cycle into their organizations. And we try and support that as much as possible. I'd say it's baked deep into our DNA to be laser focused on activation in a privacy and security first way.
I mean, what is interesting in your case is that you're kind of an Adtech business, which many investors have shied away in the last, I would say, 20 years. I mean, I'm not saying all of them have, but it hasn't been the most investable area. Mostly because there's a lot of shenanigans happening there, and so people didn't want to all the opportunities felt like hacks or shady businesses. And the good thing for you is that you want to be kind of clean from the start. So that will be kind of a differentiator in your messaging, even for investors, I assume.
It's absolutely the case, and that because of the massive adoption of cloud platforms over the last 10 years, there is a huge opportunity to bring total transparency, both in what drives performance, and that's an advertising topic, but also how the technology works and how the commercials should be. So yeah, we work in we work in the area of bringing first-party customer data to advertising in a safe and secure way. That first-party data is a massive asset for any enterprise organization. We believe that those organizations have already invested enough time and money in collecting and structuring that data. So the activation of it shouldn't come at any further incremental cost. And that's why we built a model which enables just one flat fee for licensing the software. And then the organization themselves running on their cloud platform can use it as much as possible, making the most of all of the data which is stored within their cloud and housed in their data warehouse, and using only the compute which they're already happy with. Yeah, that's why we embrace the cloud native methodology and fundamentally believe it's the future of software, not just in advertising, but in any other vertical you could think of. Advertising has its own privacy and security challenges, but I'm very attracted to verticals like accounting, where organizations today might be very happy using services, like Xero or something like that to do their accounting. But I'd suggest that financial data is some of the most sensitive data, and perhaps you'd want to run it exactly where you run all of your other enterprise stack. The SaaS model, whilst it works great today, from a hosting and processing perspective, we might think differently in years to come.
My question would be, one thing to keep in mind if you're approaching investors for what you're doing is the fact that obviously cloud has been a massive trend in the last 10, let's just say 10, 15 years. And privacy and security is not only not new, but has been a massive focus post ATT, like the changes that Apple have made that change the way that Facebook, especially, and Google account for advertising success, leveraging their platform. And so my question is, why do you think that audiences time is now? Like, why couldn't something like that be launched and get success 2, 3, 4 years ago?
I believe we're at a two crisis points for marketing and technology, for advertising, marketing and technology. One, there's been, we've had 30 years of third-party hosted software as a service, and most marketing and advertising is not data-driven, so it's failed. It's fundamentally failed. The ability for an enterprise to use their data on a third-party platform hasn't worked. And in the positive, there's been a massive adoption and investment in cloud technologies. So now enterprises have the ability to run their own applications within their data stack, and it's in that we have the solution. And that's why I think the time is now, because I think there's overwhelming frustration that marketing and advertising technology has not delivered for the advertiser. And I think on both sides of the Atlantic, both public policy in terms of regulation, and also enterprise requirements and governance from a privacy and security perspective, mean that marketers and the office of the CTO, they're not going to make the naive decisions that they made 10 or 20 years ago to invest in a marketing cloud or something like this. They increasingly understand that that in order to bring their data intelligence to their marketing and advertising, they should do it directly from source, directly from what they have within their tables on their cloud infrastructure.
I would say that, I mean, I think that you have an interesting pitch and a good traction to show, and it will be interesting to see how investors react to your pitch. I will welcome you to talk to my friends at Long Journey, but I'm sure there are many investors both in Europe and in the US that will be very interested in talking to you. I think that the last question you had was about whether you should stay in the UK, whether you should move to the US to follow a market expansion. I mean, there are multiple angles to that. There's I would say, VC angle. There is also a go-to-market angle and working with cloud providers. Maybe Patrick, to go back to you, like, what have you seen among your client base? Do you think that being in the UK could be Rob could be penalized, or what have you seen?
No, I think actually just the opposite. With the marketplaces, it's becoming easier to sell no matter where you're headquartered. I mean, just look at like Darktrace, for example. And everything they went through this past year, they're still doing fantastic, and they're crushing it on marketplace. Just as an example, Microsoft is super heavily leaned in, as I mentioned earlier, in the UK. They've got a lot of personas and personalities that are having meetings all the time with folks in the area. And so I think the cloud providers acknowledge that the growth is not just in Silicon Valley anymore, right? The purpose of the cloud is to bring services to anyone, anywhere. And you can't do that if you have to be headquartered somewhere. So I think in 2025, when this is out here, there shouldn't have to be a particular location that matters when it comes to marketplace. They're adopting and changing their strategy to make sure that every company has that same opportunity.
Interesting. And that's cool. I mean, sometimes being in a smaller market means that the go-to-market team from the platforms also can lean in more on you and push you more, which can be advantageous as well, I assume. I would say my feedback on that specifically is that if I were in your shoes, my behavior for the next couple of years would depend mostly on who is your lead investor. If you're having a US lead investor, for your seed, my hunch would be that they would want you to be not too far. But I don't think it's necessarily a requirement. And so if you didn't move straight to the US, I would at least start building a relationship with customers in the US, so that when you do move to the US, maybe after your Series A or something, your customers have seen you, they know you, they view you as a real player, a massive player. And so as you scale your go-to-market motions in the country, in the US, then you have a lot of credibility, and you don't have to build that credibility from scratch. I think that will be my number one advice. But initially, since you're working with a lot of global brands, if you have L'Oreal or BP UK, I mean, it will be a credible logo on your website and on your pitch decks when you sell to the US. Like, these are brands that are well known on both sides of the pond.
I think you hit a good point there, Pascal. people still buy from people, and that's why even the marketplaces are bringing back in the channel and distribution. Initially, that was a huge disruptor, and people were like, "Is this the end of the channel and disty?" But people are still buying from their channel partners that they trust. People are still buying from their network and their reviewers and millennials and Gen Z and all these folks who are now becoming decision makers mainly buy from other people that they trust. So holding that network, I think, is always going to be a smart idea. So great advice.
Robert, do you have a questions on that item or on the fundraising?
I think it's all good advice, and definitely, I think as we progress with fundraising, the investors, the partners that we bring on board are going to definitely, we're looking forward to them supporting us develop our go-to-market in the US specifically. Largely, I agree that gone are the days that we should get a New York office from day zero, and we should hire a reflection of our team from the UK into the US, and we should try and sort of incorporate in a grand way from day zero, day one. I think we'll be far more careful and deliberate in what we do, and it's going to be really exciting. I think there are multiple routes to market. Like today, talking about the role of marketplaces alongside lots of others is going to be super key for us, and we're going to look to do it as always in the smartest and most sort of capital efficient way possible.
So I have a last question for you. We're going to switch gears to my last random questions before you go, Robert and Patrick. One of my favorite interview questions from when I was interviewing at Checker. What did you learn from your mother, Robert?
Yeah, very good. Absolutely love the opportunity to answer this question. If you're ever in doubt of what someone thinks about something or how they feel about something, and this works perfectly in business, find the opportunity to speak to them directly, ideally face to face. But the telephone is your friend as well. So I try and do that as much as possible. Earlier today, I definitely had, I felt like I was taking that advice directly, on receiving email and messages from a client. My immediate reflex was to call them. As my mum said, it's not just what they say, it's how they feel about what they say and what their motivations are. I'm always very happy to live by that advice.
Thanks. Last question. What is the most overrated tool on the SaaS market today? I think I have a hunch of what you're going to say, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, I won't name any names, but I think the marketing clouds, absolutely. The ones which are, the big ones, the Adobes, the Salesforces and similar, they were never conceived as genuinely multi-solution stacks. They're just a collection of stuff they managed to buy at a good price, and their shareholders haven't allowed them to invest in integrating them, and they sit outside of the enterprise's cloud stack. Enough's enough. We've given them 30 years of it. Now you've invested in GCP, Azure, or AWS. Let's build the applications inside of your infrastructure which deliver for your business.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Patrick. And thank you for this great episode of Indie Board Session.